Hi, everybody. Matthew Turnage here. Before we get started today, I'd like to say really quick thank you to all my subscribers. I really appreciate your support. And if you're not a subscriber and you happen to be watching this video, please check out my other videos. And if you like what you see, please consider subscribing as well. Thanks. All right, today we're going to do a review of the Beatles album Magical Mystery Tour. Now, this is a unique album in the Beatles' discography in that when the Beatles standardized their catalog in 1987, they went with the UK version of all their albums, except for Magical Mystery Tour. With that one, the standardized version became the one prepared by Capitol Records for the US in 1967. And of course, the big difference is Magical Mystery Tour in the UK was originally released as a double EP, and I don't have an actual copy of the original double EP, but here's a copy of the CD version that was included in the compact disc EP box set. And it gives you an idea of a smaller version of what the original one was like with this artwork, and included with a 24-page book. You had the two 7-inch EP discs, just like the CDs in this set. You know, one in a pocket in each side with the book in between with photos and the cartoon story of the album and lyrics, and then the second one in the back. And the U.S. Capitol said, look, EPs don't do anything here. We can't sell that. We need to release an album. And so the Beatles agreed to let them do that. And you see they slightly modified the cover artwork. This is the original EP artwork here in the center, and they added this more kind of psychedelic border listing the 6 songs from the EP on the top, and then the 5 tracks that they added that make up side 2 of the album, A and B sides of singles released in 1967 across the bottom. But they did include also in the album the book in LP size, so that in addition to the extra tracks is an advantage of the US version. You get a much bigger book with the photos and everything involved. All right, so on to the music itself. Side 1 of the album is the Magical Mystery Tour soundtrack, the songs from the film, the same ones that were on the British EP, although Capitol rearranged the order for LP for the LP experience. And of course, the album kicks off with the title track, Magical Mystery Tour, which is meant to introduce us both to the soundtrack and to the film. And it's a great Paul rocker. We've got that fanfare to kick off, and John's call, roll up for the mystery tour, that kind of leads us into it. It's a great introduction and a great song. It's nice and up-tempo. Like I said, it kind of gets you in the mood, sets the stage for the show. And in that sense, to me, I've always felt like the song was a bit of Son of Sergeant Pepper, to be honest. It reminds me very much of the opening track on the Sergeant Pepper's album. It has that same sort of, welcome to the show kind of vibe to the lyrics. And, they're both sort of up-tempo rockers by Paul. But great songs both. The Magical Mystery Tour song to me is not quite as good as the Sgt. Pepper song, but still a good song and a good way to kick off the album. Second up on the LP is Fool on the Hill, which is another Paul track. And this is a really great song with a great melody by Paul. I've talked before how effortless his melodies seem to be, and this is an example of that. Great arrangements with the flutes on there. And another thing that's sort of interesting about the track is you've got that bass harmonica in there. Now, early on, the Beatles, of course, did use a good bit of harmonica on their songs, early tracks like "Love Me Do," for example. But the bass harmonica, I can't recall if they've ever used that before. I don't remember it off the top of my head in any tracks. And I'm kind of wondering if that might be a bit of the Pet Sounds influence. Paul has talked a lot about how that album really inspired them with Sgt. Pepper, which of course preceded Magical Mystery Tour. But Pet Sounds does have a few tracks that has a pretty prominent bass harmonica. I know There's an Answer is a song that I particularly like on Pet Sounds that has pretty prominent use of it. So I kind of wonder if Paul might have picked that up from there. But anyway, Fool on the Hill is a tremendous song, and lyrically it's interesting because I think it's sort of about the Maharishi who they had recently met and become influenced by. and it's the idea of this guy, this fool on the hill. Everybody thinks he's a fool, but perhaps he's wiser than people realize. Third track on the album is Flying, which is the instrumental track, credited to all four Beatles as songwriters on that one. It's a nice song. It serves its purpose in the soundtrack. It grooves along and is fun, but it's sort of an inconsequential track. I like it, but it's not going to rank as a favorite of mine. Fourth up is George's contribution, Blue Jay Way, it's an interesting song. I don't usually consider it one of my favorite George songs, but it's got some nice things going on there. There's this album coming out in at the end of 1967. We're in that psychedelic period of music, and the Beatles have certainly experimented with psychedelia. And this song definitely fits in that mold. I like the organ sound in it. There's sort of those kind of dreamy vocals, especially the backing vocals. It's a really interesting song, but the lyrics are fairly prosaic, I guess you could say, because it's just about George on his trip to Los Angeles in the summer of '67, waiting for Derek Taylor to show up. It's so all that "please don't be long" is all Derek, hurry up and get here. It was a foggy evening, hence the reference to "There's a fog upon L.A." All that is happening, and the house that George was staying at was on Blue Jay Way, so hence the title. Next up, we get another Paul song, and this is really an example of how we can see how Paul was beginning to dominate the songwriting in the later Beatles period because of the 6 Magical Mystery Tour songs. 3 of them are Paul songs. And then with the instrumental, George and John only get 1 each. But Your Mother Should Know is a nice song. This would be what John calls Paul's granny music. So it fits in with songs like Honey Pie that would come up next on the White Album, and You Gave Me the Answer from Wings, later on in the Venus and Mars album. I typically like that style from Paul. This particular song I'm not crazy about. It's fine. I do think it's interesting lyrically that he's trying to sort of bridge the generation gap there a little bit, perhaps. But it's a good song, but not a particular favorite of mine. But the next track is, we close out side 1 in the Magical Mystery Tour soundtrack portion of the album with "I Am the Walrus." Of course, the song which and the sequence in the film which inspired the costumes on the cover. It's one of the best songs that John ever did, in my opinion. I love John and his experimental mode in this period. It's the Lewis Carroll inspired lyrics are great. I love the strings in the track. It's just a bizarre track that goes through some different phases and kind of twists, and it's very psychedelic also. But the thing that's most fascinating to me is the last section of the song, when we get to the bits of the King Lear dialogue that get faded in and out. And what's amazing to me about that is, that's art that's happening in the moment that can't be recreated, because that happened as they were mixing the track for mono in the studio. During the live mix sessions, John had the BBC radio there and fading it in and out, so you're catching snatches of dialogue as it was being broadcast. So at any other time, he would have gotten something completely different. He got what he got because it was happening at that moment as they were doing that live mono mixing session. And because it was done that way, it couldn't be repeated. So when they later came to do the mix for stereo, since the King Lear dialogue was mixed in with the mono mix live as they were mixing it, they couldn't. It wasn't a separate element that could be separated out for the stereo mix. So that's why if you're listening to the stereo version, and it's especially noticeable if you're on headphones, when you get just before that section, it's been in stereo, you've been hearing it in both ears, and then at that point they have to switch to the mono version for the remainder of the track, and so you notice that switching to mono. But it's still great. That whole change into sitting in an English garden. I love all that stuff. Great song from John. One of my absolute favorites. I Am the Walrus. And that closes out side one in the Magical Mystery Tour soundtrack. So on the Capitol LP, we flip it over, and side two, we get these songs that were A and B sides of singles released earlier in the year. So it does make the album a bit of a hodgepodge. These weren't conceived as part of the Magical Mystery Tour album or soundtrack, but they were of the period, and I think it's a good as a listening experience as an album. I think they go together well enough that if you didn't know, like if you were totally new to the Beatles and you just pick up this album, you don't know any of the history, don't know any of the releases, I think they would fit together well enough that you wouldn't necessarily know that it was the album was compiled the way it was. So we open up side two with Hello Goodbye, which actually was recorded at the same time as Magical Mystery Tour, but always intended to be a standalone single. In fact, of course, the flip side of the single was I Am the Walrus. Um, Pop Perfection from Paul. I love that song. It's so bouncy and happy, and I love the duality of the lyrics. You say goodbye and I say hello. The contrast between the positive and negative. Maybe it's optimism and pessimism. I don't know, but that duality I really like a lot. And of course, the coda at the end that would become a bit of a thing with the Beatles. Hey Jude, of course, most famously with the coda, but I like the coda ending, and this one is a lot of fun. Again, great pop song from Paul, and then we follow that up with Strawberry Fields Forever, which is again, I talked about I Am the Walrus, John's experimentalism. Another great experimental John track with Strawberry Fields Forever, and another one of the best songs he ever wrote. Um, Again, it's fascinating how that song was put together. I love listening to the different versions on the Sergeant Pepper box set to see the different takes and how the song evolved, and what they ended up with is just absolutely magnificent. Um, Again, John's lyrics, sort of the looking back, and the nostalgia element that's there, and the surrealism also, and the psychedelia, and the way the track is recorded, the mellotron, all that is great. Ringo's drumming on this track, it's excellent throughout, but his whole career really, but on this track in particular, I think it's amazing. Um, and the outro to that has that really kind of freaky kind of outro that's really cool. Then we come to Penny Lane, which was the flip side of the single with Strawberry Fields Forever. And it's sort of Paul's take on this idea of nostalgia and looking back. And of course, his is more sort of poppy and perhaps a bit more immediately accessible to the general populace, which is why it ended up being the number one uh, track on the one that hit number one in the US, as opposed to Strawberry Fields. Um, Even though I personally like Strawberry Fields Forever a little bit better. I understand why Penny Lane was the bigger hit, and I also love that song too. It's also perhaps a bit more psychedelic than it gets credit for. Paul's lyrics, I think, are particularly interesting. The way he phrases things, about the barber with a picture of every head that he's known, things like that. Um, all the sort of imagery that he selects, even though he's talking about sort of ordinary things in the street, it gives him a slightly surrealistic bent, which is fascinating. And of course, another great bass line from Paul. The bass sound he had during this period, 66, 67, is incredible. And David Mason's piccolo trumpet solo, everybody always talks about it. It's the perfect touch on top of the song. It's the cherry on top of the ice cream sundae, I guess. Um, Next up is "Baby You're a Rich Man," which is originally the B side of All You Need Is Love. Sorry, senior moment there for a second. Um, I love "Baby You're a Rich Man." I think it's a great song. It's a lot of fun. Of course, two songs put together. The verse bit was written by John. The chorus was something that Paul had. They mashed them together, got a great song out of it. Again, experimental and the instrumentation a little bit. There's that it's a clavioline that makes that weird sound that runs throughout that John is playing. And yeah, the chorus is such a great chorus from Paul. It's very sing along. I always want to sing along with it. And it's fun for me too because again, coming to the Beatles when I did, being born when I was, as I was hearing, whatever was new at the time as I was coming up, sometimes I would hear cover songs of Beatles songs before I heard the originals. This is one. This is one. I don't know if anybody else remembers a rap group in the '80s called the Fat Boys, and they had a film called Disorderlies, which I remember renting from my local video rental place and watching. And I don't remember much about the movie. I remember thinking it was funny, but I couldn't tell you anything about it now, other than there's a sequence in there where they do a cover of "Baby You're a Rich Man," which it's quite different from the original. Basically, the only thing they retain is the melody of the "Beautiful People" bit and then the chorus. But anyway, so I kind of knew it as that before I heard the Beatles version. But it's a favorite of mine. I absolutely love "Baby You're a Rich Man." And then we'll close out the album with "All You Need Is Love," the ultimate anthem of 1967. The lyrics are very simple but direct, which is, I think, why it was chosen to be the Beatles' song for the One World broadcast. It was something that could translate very easily across the world to all types of people. It's a very positive message, which I think is great. And it's a great way to close out the album. It closes out on an up note, on a positive note, and the fade out in the song is great, where they sort of reference back to the earlier years as John starts singing "She Loves You," yeah, 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 when the song fades. And it's amazing to think, it's sort of hearkening back to sort of a simpler, more innocent, perhaps, or at least a more innocent view that the public had of the Beatles, and it seems like they've come such a long way since then, and yet it was only 4 years between the time they recorded "She Loves You" and the time they recorded "All You Need Is Love," and it's amazing how much they changed and evolved in that time. But Magical Mystery Tour, the album is a great album. Um, it was a great move by Capitol to put it out as an album, to get all those great 1967 singles together on one side, along with all the Magical Mystery Tour soundtrack tracks. Great package too, with the gatefold cover, and again, like I said, the full 12-inch size book with the photographs. It was a great Christmas gift to Beatles fans in 1967. I have a friend who was around then and remembers getting that album for Christmas, and as he said, he remembers listening to "Hello Goodbye" as he was putting together his playing with his train set that he got for Christmas. But a tremendous album. I'm glad that not only Capitol put it out as an album, but that the Beatles decided to keep that as the standard version worldwide when they consolidated in '87. So there's my thoughts on Magical Mystery Tour. What do you think of the album? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.